called Zach and the Great Disco Nap of 2020. I doubt I'm alone when I say I've spent the last few months trying to live a normal life while accepting the fact that, yes, Virginia, we're living in a certifiable nightmare. Each day finds me tossing and turning and wondering if I'm over or underreacting. Am I giving myself a break or am I letting myself go? Am I actually okay or do I need an intervention? This unsteadiness played out on a recent Saturday in Central Park, where my friends Trey, Mishka, and I were each rolling around on our own patch of grass, drinking too much rosé, and pretending, at least for the time being, that all was right with the world. We kept things light, mainly just people watching and amusing each other with stories, wondering why an adult human would order a hot dog in a pizza joint, and trying to figure out what caused Elton John to change his song, I'm Still Standing, to I'm Dill Dandin. You know, things of that benign and ridiculous nature. So there we were, just shooting the breeze when we first laid eyes on Zach. Or, I should say, heard Zach. I mean, you couldn't not hear Zach. He was so loud and awkward and thirsty for attention. He tried way too hard to seem cool, calling everybody brah, yet he wasn't convincing anyone in his group of about 10 unmasked people in their early 20s who sat sucking down white claws with indifference while trying to ignore Zach, who was, in his own weirdly charming way, a magnet, but not in the way that he wished. It's so easy to spot the weakest one in the herd, my friend Trey sighed, spying the irritation on everyone's faces as Zach drowned them out of every conversation. Poor Zach. As his White Claw consumption increased, so did his already high decibel level. We tried to ignore all of them, this pack of bras, but they kept giving us looks that said, sorry about Zach, who was oblivious and just kept talking and drinking and sounding louder as some of his friends egged him on more than they tried to silence him. Then someone passed him a joint. Uh-oh, Trey said. Here we go. We all knew Zach was about to hit a wall, which is exactly what he did. Fast. Just moments after taking that hit, he staggered off, White Claw in hand, and fell onto a seat on a bench on the lower lip of the great lawn. Zach is not Dill Dandin, Mishka said in her Russian accent, which, trust me, makes the sound even funnier than it is in English. No, he most certainly is not, I replied. Still, Zach's friends, true to form, taunted him from the lawn. One of them yelled, the party's at 7, brah. You gonna make it? This caused the group to crack up, believing Zach was down for the count. I called out to the yeller, who seemed to be the leader of the bras, or, as my people might call him, the king of the dipshits. Is someone going to take care of him? The big bra nodded and directed an underling to go sit with Zach, which was more for our benefit than for Zach's, but that was okay. As Trey, Mishka, and I watched poor Zach, who sat with his head between his knees, we recounted the times in our own lives when we've either been Zach or the poor caretaker coaxing a Zach-alike back to sobriety. Like that time years ago when I visited my friend Christy in L.A. We had spent the evening in her apartment, drinking wine and catching up. All was well until around midnight, when Christy leaned forward in her chair and glanced toward the empty space over her shoulder. The color drained from her face as she whispered in earnest, "Is there a king standing behind me?" "What?" I asked, certain that I had misheard her. "A French king," she said, motioning once more. "In purple." "Did you take something?" I asked, and tried to not freak out. She said she'd popped a new pill she'd been prescribed called Ambien, which was meant to help her sleep. I decided I should keep her awake and talking, like that poor Brock was doing on the bench right now with Zach. And it's a good thing I did, because Christy soon became coherent enough to acknowledge that the king, and his entire family, mind you, which had also assembled in the living room, wasn't real. We said goodnight and went off to bed, with me feeling lucky that Christy was going to be okay. Like Zach. After about an hour or so, he was sober enough to eventually rise from the bench, his so-called friends cheering as he wobbled on his way out of the park. We wondered if he would make it to the party that night. Trey said no way. Mishka said she wasn't sure. But I chose the optimistic route and thought Zach might have himself a disco nap and then go to the soiree. As the day wore on without Zach, who we kind of missed in spite of ourselves, I realize this whole damn thing feels like one long and shitty, never-ending disco nap. A slow, miserable, and seemingly endless foggy slog that will not result in a good time on the other side. Even if we could just go, like Zach, to sleep off this wasted feeling, we'd still feel the weight of all that's happened. Let's face it, we have a long road ahead of us, and it's not going to be much fun. Look, I really don't care if Zach made it to the party. Who cares about parties these days? I just want Zach and all of us, even the bras who aren't wearing their goddamn masks, to be okay and to take care of each other and to say to one another, as well to ourselves, even now while we're still in the thick of things, that yes, in spite of all that we've endured and will continue to withstand, we're Dill Dandin.